Yeah, and I think it's, it depends what you're buying, and it depends if it's talking about a service, it's what's the best way to get that done. So IR35 in some ways, by kind of clarifying the picture, although some would say muddying the waters in it's quite a grey area piece of legislation, but clarifying the picture around saying, if you want to get a piece of work done, you can either use your perm employees, or you can use contractors and temps if it's compliant, and you have to do the right process, or you can outsource it on a deliverables basis. And so if it makes sense to outsource it on a deliverables basis, which it won't all of the time, but where it does, then that puts an onus of responsibility on the company to define what it is they need to get done. Exactly. But then they've got the security of knowing that they're going to pay X to get Y, and they're happy with that, and they've justified that. And I think it creates a very pragmatic approach within organizations where they're having to really think about, what do I need to do? Because if you've got people just sitting there, however they're working on a time and materials basis, it's much easier to just let it run. Absolutely. Whereas if you've got a supplier, you're holding them to account on a specific deliverable. It's a totally more pragmatic way to do it. And it ties into what's the business strategy, which comes back to this point about strategic workforce planning, which is crucial, because I think a lot of organizations, their problem stems from the fact they haven't got their overall strategy clearly communicated, in terms of spreading that out to the business to say, this is the overall strategy, this is where we're going, these are the things we need to do to get there, and this is how we're going to do these things, and therefore please add your value to that.
Exactly. So another area, I don't know if you cover this or not, but I'm starting to see in this digital transformation landscape, because we've accelerated 10 years of development into a year effectively in the last 12 months, everyone's going digital. So there are loads of digital transformation projects going on. Anyone that's in that kind of digital transformation space is really busy. People that will build e-commerce engines, the back end, the front end, the UX, all of the kind of the marketing assets behind it, etc. That's a really busy landscape. But they're often, as I see, contracted on an agile basis.
Yeah.
Now, as a procurement person, I just cringe at agile, because you're saying to me, like, what we're going to do, Mike, is we're going to run like heck for like 6 weeks. It's going to cost you this. And when we get there, we'll find out what we're going to do next. I'm like, no, no. I'm about to write you an open checkbook. I can't do that. I can't. It's against all of the kind of like everything in my nature to say, we don't know what's coming after the 6 weeks, but we know what 6 weeks looks like. When we get to 6 weeks, we'll redo it. And I say, well, but if I don't like your plan for the next 6 weeks, what happens? So you can stop. I'm like, well, I can't, can I? Because you've drawn me in, and it's now so complex, I can't switch. And that's a nightmare for a buyer. The only experience of agile?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a compromise, because there are certain situations where it's absolutely the required method to deliver what it is. Particularly if it's an extremely complex and maybe groundbreaking technical development, for example. So we see sometimes people within the system, our milestones are quite flexible. So they might actually, as a proxy for milestones, they might be using sprints within an agile methodology.
Yes.
Which requires an overall project scope, but then the specific deliverables or the specific sprints to be defined on an ongoing basis.
And with a cap, presumably, on the spend, at some point, someone's got to say, it's complex, it's unknown, but we're going to cap this spend at 500,000. We can't go over 500,000.
Yeah, I mean, typically you'd have some overall parameters around it as to what the expectations are of the kind of overall cost of the entire project. But sometimes it's just like the shape and stages and steps of that project.
They have to flex. They
have to flex, because there are dependencies that come in at each different stage. So I think it's a really, really interesting point. I think it's not something that you can say, oh, we can't do it like that. It's something that, organizations need to find the best way to do it. But again, if you're clearly tracking it and you're clearly monitoring it on a real-time basis, then you have the best possible opportunity of getting the right result and not ending up in a sticky situation where you've been kind of getting led along, because you can see what's happening in real time. You can see where you are against projected outcomes and what the overall kind of project parameters are looking like.
I mean, good old kind of like, you can track, like, as we used to do many, many years ago on projects, is that you draw the expected spend profile and then you track the actual. And if you start to see the actual just heading over the expected, and it keeps going and it keeps going like that, you're like, well, hang on a minute. This isn't going to get back inside the envelope unless we do something different. So at least you can start to see, yeah, okay, things have changed. Do we reset the target, or do we need to bring something else back in line? So I think systems would be really helpful, and dashboarding to allow executives who aren't technical and who aren't procurement people to understand, where's this project going that's on an agile basis, where's the spend going, and to your point, what's being delivered, what have we found out, what have we discovered along the way?